Hey gamers, I'm Josh, and welcome to Copper Dragon Games. Today I'll be sharing 5 of my favorite add-ons for Foundry Virtual Tabletop that will save you time during your sessions. Let's get to it. The first add-on we're going to discuss is just called Deselect. By default, Foundry lets you select something and select something else to click off of it. However, clicking just anywhere on the map doesn't do anything. Can draw a square or whatever and switch off of it, but that's not exactly user friendly. It's not obvious when you first download the program. First thing you'll probably want to do if you're going to be using Foundry is download this really quick and easy add-on called Deselect, and we'll activate that really quickly. Deselection, excuse me. And all this does is change the way Foundry lets you click off of things. So if you've selected this scout, for example, you can click anywhere else on the map and it'll deselect the scout. Easy peasy. It may not sound like a big deal, but trust me, as you're using this software, you're going to want to be able to click off of one thing without having to select something else. The next add-on we're going to talk about is just called pings. Sometimes you want to draw your player's attention to a certain spot on a map. You can do that natively within Foundry with just with a certain configuration setting for permissions, and that is displaying the mouse cursor. It's cool to have that on for players because you can always see where they're looking. However, for DMs, having that on by default can be problematic. For example, if you're moving some invisible foes, you may not want your players to know exactly where those tokens are that you're moving, and if you have this setting turned on, they can always see where your mouse cursor is. The alternative to that, or you can use it in addition to that, is the pings add-on. Activate that real quickly. Now that we have pings activated, you can ping somewhere on the map, and this little graphic will show up on all your players' screens. Draw their attention to that point on the map. If I want to say this goblin is yelling at you and screaming curses as it pulls its mace and starts charging in your direction, they know exactly which one I'm talking about. The third add-on we'll be discussing is one called Better Rolls for 5e. By default, when you roll an attribute or an attack for a character in the game, you get a little card for that ability. So you click once to get the card, then you have to click again to attack with it. Then you have to choose whether it's advantage or disadvantage or a normal attack. Then once you decide whether it hits or not, then you have to roll damage and then decide whether it needs to be a normal or a critical hit. By the time you've resolved one attack, you've had to click once to activate the card, again to say you're attacking, again to choose whether it's a regular, normal, or with advantage, again to say you need damage, and a fifth time to specify whether it's a normal or a critical hit. That's 5 clicks for one action, and that may not seem like a lot, but in game that is tedious. Better Rolls for 5e fixes that problem by combining all that into one click. We'll go ahead and activate that real quickly. Now, with Better Rolls for 5e activated, I can click that one attack one time, and I get 2 rolls for the attack. So I can use this as advantage or disadvantage, or just a straight roll. If it's a straight roll, I take the first one. If it's disadvantage, I take the lower. If it's advantage, I take the higher. It's easy for me to do that without having to click multiple times to specify one way or the other. It also rolls the damage all in one roll. This is a really common way of speeding up play when you're playing in person, rolling damage dice and the d20 at the same time. Better Rolls for 5e adds that capability to Foundry itself, again with the goal of speeding up play. The next add-on we're going to discuss is called Token Mold. If you haven't downloaded this yet, you need to ASAP. As a DM, this is a huge time saver. It helps with lots of different things when you're setting up your game. Not only with basics, but also just the way things look. We'll install it real quickly. You're welcome for using token mold. It is amazing. So here's what you get with token mold. Once it's installed, you can go over to the actors directory and click on the settings button. This will give you lots of different customization options for when you add a token from your actors directory to the board. You can modify the names of tokens as they get added. For example, adding numbers to them so that Goblin number 1 is distinguishable by name from Goblin number 846. Let's hope for your player's sake that you don't actually have 846 goblins that you're placing on the board. But hey, to each their own. You can also add random adjectives from a dictionary that can give you some creative inspiration to help describe them and set them apart. I'm realizing that as I'm describing this, that this is especially helpful for when you are putting hordes on the board. These help you distinguish between lots of different, very similar monsters. Setting token size to creature size and scale to map scale, that can be very helpful. Sometimes the default scaling is a little off, so you might have a huge miniature or a huge creature that you drag over onto the board, but it shows up in a 1x1 square, and that is problematic for a lot of reasons. This overrides that and makes sure that if the stat block says that it is huge, it will actually show up in size. The default configuration lets you change lots of things here. My favorite on this list is actually the random scale multiplier. So you can activate this, and all of your monsters that you place of the same type will be randomly resized just slightly. You can change the settings so it's a pretty significant change, but this gives you a little variation. Again, when you're placing a horde, not every goblin in your horde will be the exact same size. So let's see it in action. Before you start dropping tokens on the board, you do want to make sure that all these are checked, or at least the ones that you're using. If I change a configuration option, for example, but this is turned off, it's not going to activate those variations. So I want config to be on. I'm going to start dropping goblins on the board here, and theoretically they should resize slightly so that they are different from one another, and we see the definite variation in size here. Some are much smaller than others. I think that I would want to fine tune this so that it wasn't this little. This almost looks like a baby instead of just a slightly smaller goblin. But again, that's what the configuration settings are for. These goblins that I just added also have the special naming conventions that we added. So this is Sweeping Goblin number 12. Apparently the 12th goblin that we added to the board. Next one, Entertaining Goblin, number 10, 10th goblin that we added to the board. So that's may never be relevant, but if you ever need to be able to describe one of them differently than the others, it gives you a really quick and easy way to get some quick inspiration. Maybe this Entertaining Goblin is dressed like a jester. Maybe this Sweeping Goblin is pulling some Cobra Kai sweep the leg action. Who knows? But in any case, it gives us the quick little bit of inspiration, quick way of differentiating between them on the battlefield to our players. The last add-on I want to talk about today is called Dice Tray. In the native application here, unmodified, there isn't a really easy way to roll dice, which you would think would be a lot easier to find on a virtual tabletop. Unfortunately, most of the dice rolling is contained within the character sheets of the various NPCs and characters. That's fine most of the time. You pull up your character sheet, you click on your attack, you're good to go. However, there are plenty of times in play that you forgot to add a modifier to your sheet, or you know what an abilities roll should be and you don't feel like digging through the sheet to find it, you just want to roll a d20. This add-on called Dice Tray adds a little dice tray just below the chat box here. So we'll activate that and I'll show you what it can do. Much like the others that I've described in this video, this is very simplistic. It's just a quality of life add-on for those times that you don't want to have to dig through your character sheet for ability and you just need to roll some dice. So maybe I know my modifier is +5 for my stealth, and DM says roll stealth. Well, here I can just roll a d20, and I can add 5 in my head and make it 14. Sometimes that is a lot easier than having your character sheet open and digging for the correct ability to click on. It also makes it easy for the DM if the DM is running some monster that maybe you pulled out at the last minute and didn't have time to upload all the stats, or perhaps there's an ability that you need to check that the configuration in the stat block is incorrect. This gives you the option to very quickly and very easily just roll some dice without it having to be keyed to a character sheet. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked what you saw, learned something new, or just enjoyed hanging out, I encourage you to click the like and subscribe links below. I'll be back soon to share more gaming tips and tricks. See you next time.